Hi folks, this is David Blakesley giving you a concise review of Martin Scorsese's World Cinema Project Volume 5, just released by the Criterion Collection on January 20th, 2026. Just one of many excellent offerings they have in the month of January. This is one I've been spending about the last week or so going through, and it has been a very wonderful, memorable experience for me. Just encountering films from cultures I'm not that familiar with, but they really kind of opened up my world a little bit. So let me just give you some quick take impressions of what you get in this set. There are 2 films from Africa, 2 films from Asia, 2 epic blockbusters to bookend the set, the first and the last, and 2 smaller, more intimate films in the middle. Let's just talk about what they are. Mohamed Lakhdar Hamina is the director of Chronicle of the Years of Fire. If you are a fan of the Battle of Algiers, and most people who've seen it are pretty impressed, you really owe it to yourself to see Chronicle of the Years of Fire. This is the Algerian side of the conflict between the Algerians and the French that led to this Algerian War of Liberation, this kind of overthrow of colonial powers. Started in the 30s, really kind of kicked into a full-scale war in the 1950s. It's the background for things like the Umbrellas of Cherbourg, for instance. And it was a very, cathartic event for both the Algerian people and the French. This is a 3-hour epic that really gets into the history that Algerians went through that kind of made the revolt and the rebellion necessary for them to have their independence and freedom. It's solemn, it's long, there's not a lot of humor. It's a story of an oppressed people telling their side of a cataclysmic conflict, very moving, and it'll open your eyes to a lot of the tragedy and the suffering that colonized people went through in the years, especially leading up to and after the Second World War. YAM DAABO is a film from Burkina Faso. It's the first film, the first feature of Idrissa Ouedraogo, who apparently is a fairly significant African filmmaker. I don't know much about him other than what I saw in the special features here. He seems like a pretty dynamic, impressive young man. He had been up in France studying filmmaking and getting an education, brought it back to his nation of Burkina Faso. And this is a film about ordinary African people living in kind of an impoverished area. This is post-colonial, but really the echoes and the shadows of the colony experiment continue to linger over that society. People who are very dependent on government aid. It's a drought-stricken area. There's not a lot of food. They decide to kind of relocate to the bigger city. They go through some experiences. There's some tragic things that happen. It's a very meditative, quiet film. There's a lot of scenes of not a whole lot of talking, but a lot of yearning expressions, a lot of looks, minimal dialogue, but it conveys a whole lot. It's really about the simple, ordinary lives of Africans. Pretty moving, and also there are some touches of humor and just the goodness of everyday life, but the struggle as well. G. Aravindan is the director of KUMMATTY. This is a film from India. It's from the southern kind of tip of the Indian subcontinent, and there's a lot of kind of folkloric and traditional music. KUMMATTY, the title of the film, is kind of a boogeyman type of character. He's kind of a Pied Piper, kind of a crazy wisdom figure who comes out of the hills. The children call his name. KUMMATTY is kind of the object of different childhood sing-songs and things of that sort. And he has a little bit of a touch of magic to him. And it's a very enchanting film about children, again, kind of finding a little bit of an escape with this mischievous, mysterious figure. And it has a little bit of that kind of magical realism to it. A lot of, the music and culture and the traditions of this area brought to life on screen. I enjoyed it quite a bit. But really the anchor of this is this one right here, The Fall of Otrar. This is a true badass epic about Genghis Khan swarming hordes of Mongol warriors. Made in 1991. The script was written by Alexei German, a Russian director who did Hard to Be a God, among other things. That's a pretty impressive film right there. But The Fall of Otrar was not directed by German. It was directed by Ardak Amirkulov. This is, I think, is his debut feature, and it is incredibly ambitious and mystifying. It's like, just thinking about Genghis Khan and his roaming, ravaging armies. But it's about the struggles of empires in like the 13th century. Pretty savage, pretty brutal, incredible, especially once you get into the making of the movie. But I mean, they have siege towers and, men, climbing up ladders and having molten metal poured on them, catching on fire, running around, big battles, but also just gritty, tough exchanges between the central characters, and all the suspicion and paranoia and all the machismo, all the tough guy stuff going on. It's really quite something else, and it's a film that I think probably could have been worthy of a standalone release. It's just not familiar enough to a lot of people that Criterion would trust that they would sell. But it really does provide a very compelling reason to check out this box set. I think Chronicle of the Years of Fire is a true classic. It won the Palme d'Or in 1975, which, of course, is a French film festival. If you think about the historic context of the Algerian War in France in 1975, in any case, I can imagine the reconciliation that occurred at that film festival between an Algerian director bringing his country's story to Cannes in the summer of 1975. I looked it up. Jeanne Moreau, the great French actor, female actor, was the jury president that year. And there was some other pretty good stuff, including Antonioni's The Passenger and Bob Fosse's Lenny, that were also up in competition. But this is the film that won it, Chronicle of the Years of Fire. And I think it's been a very difficult to obtain or watch movie for those who like to track down the Cannes Palme d'Or winners. This has been one of the harder ones to find, but the restoration on all of these films, all four of them, are gorgeous, impeccable. You would not know that these films had gone through some real hardship, just getting from when they were made to modern day. But the Cineteca Bologna does incredible work, and the Film Foundation and the World Cinema Project really have a lot to be proud of for bringing these films and all the other films in their series to new life and wider exposure through these excellent box sets by the Criterion Collection. So I give this a very strong recommendation. If you're into world cinema, if you want to be adventurous, discover new possibilities in film that you maybe hadn't seen before, this film is full of surprises, delights, and rewards. Check it out.